The last item in our action agenda is first reading of the proposed 2014-15 general fund budget. And I suppose we should start off with a motion, and then we can go into some discussion. Can I get a motion, Mr. Gant?
Madam Chair, I'd like to move that we give first reading approval of the proposed 2014-2015 general fund budget shown in Exhibit C.
Okay. May I have a second? Ms. Baumgartner seconds. Now we're ready for discussion. Is there going to be a presentation, Mr. Richardson? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I have in Exhibit C in your packet, you have a purple document, which is the detailed general fund budget proposal for next year. The PowerPoint, I've made the changes in it, but it hasn't significantly changed since our discussion reading. But I would like to point out that I've included some information regarding the projections that you'll see in this packet. It's based upon the budget that was ratified on June 4th by the General Assembly. And the projections are based on Senate numbers, which have not changed. That's the latest I have from the Department of Education. All of our projections are now based upon our 2014 average daily membership, which is 16,321 students. Our current weighted pupil units are 20,501, and our projected weighted pupil units for next year, based upon this new funding formula and the current 135-day average daily membership, is 22,059. This is just a slide that explains the effects of the funding change that we've probably talked about in 2 board meetings prior. Here is the proposed expenditure changes since the last time we had a discussion of the budget. The main change that you'll see in all these numbers, actually the only change that you'll see, well actually there are 2 changes, but the main change you're going to see is that about 3/4 of the way down, you'll see a negative $870,000. That is where we have determined that we're going to have some carry forward funds available, some categorical funds which we're going to shift some salaries to for 1 year. This is one of those things where we're actually, I guess, putting off the inevitable, hoping things will get better in a year, but this helps reduce our impact on our general fund. And then the other change, and I mentioned before that this number is fluid because we're trying to keep our employee profiles up to date, is the bottom line on what all, sort of the catch-all, which includes step increases and all the health insurance and retirement increases and everything of $3.1 million. And this is just a chart just showing the breakdown of our revenue picture, and I'll get to the numbers on that in a couple of slides. The projected general fund revenue just based on local and state, and then other, which includes our negative amount or our fund balance, our operational balance amount that's included in the bottom line here, which I'll get to in a later slide as well. These numbers have changed since our last meeting, and they're a little bit more up to date. But we are expecting an increase, or this revenue projection is increased by $903,646, and that's mainly just due to better information I have from based on local assessments in Richland and Lexington County. Here's a numerical breakdown of our revenue picture for the general fund, and the main thing that I'll point out here is the Education Finance Act number has increased by approximately $689,000 due to more up-to-date numbers and hopefully a more accurate reflection of what all these new weightings are going to mean for our school district. And the other small amount that's changed on here is the bus driver salary and fringe. But the EFA increase, I think I may have misspoke, is about $641,000 additional dollars, and then the remainder of that is in your bus driver salaries. Here's another slide that shows our transfers, and the only change since our last reading here is the transfer from EIA is increased by almost $126,000, and that too is based on our actual numbers that we're receiving for this year. They've been updated at the 135th day. Any questions on the revenue piece before I get into expenditure side? This just shows a breakdown of our general fund expenditures. And once again, I'll point out to you that salaries and fringe comprise approximately 89% of our budget. The total expenditure, proposed expenditures for the general fund is $356,921, and that is a decrease of approximately $691,000 as a result of using those non-recurring funds that I spoke about on one of the first couple of slides. So here's the bottom line. This is where we are currently. Our projected revenue is a little better than $161 million. Our projected expenditures are $163.3 million, which leaves us currently with a shortfall of a little better than $2.1 million. I will note that that's about $2.4 million less than the last time we were talking. So the picture is a little bit brighter. And I covered this very quickly, but this slide here is just explaining our allowable millage increase under the cap. I've estimated each additional mill would be worth approximately $230,850. So if you do the math, that would bring us in about approximately $1.5 million if the board chose to increase millage up to the allowable cap. And I will be glad to try to address any questions that you might have.
Mr. Turner.
I think if we give Mr. Richardson another month, he might find some more. But I do commend you on your diligence to look not only at ways we can save money, but in ways that we might find additional revenue in closing that gap. Because I think the first time we saw it was pretty much shell-shocked to think about where we might end this year, which I believe you're even perhaps more optimistic now than you might have been several weeks ago as to how we might end up this year too. But I want to, if I may, Madam Chair, just in no particular order, maybe just go through a couple of things. And so I wrote down some questions, but one of the things that that has always been included in our budget package that we really haven't spent much time on is in talking about these step increases. And you made a change here. So what I want to understand is you made a change in what that estimate looked like. Who these step increases cover which employees?
Step increases cover any employee in the district who is currently on a salary schedule that hasn't reached the last step, I guess. In the case of teachers, I think we go through 28 years. And for other employees, I believe we go through 18 or is it 19 years? 19 years.
Now,
sorry.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say the only, the statute mandates teacher step increases based on years of experience each year, unless General Assembly takes action to, I guess, waive that requirement, which has only happened, I think, twice in the history as far as I know. But those are the only ones that are mandated. All other step increases are we recommend that everybody gets a step increase in accordance with whatever teachers get.
And this number takes care of any benefit requirement changes as well.
I'm sorry,
If these step increases require a change in the employee's benefit amounts, and that's included here?
yes, it is.
One of the things that you had said you would bring us today would be, and I know it's not about the budget, but it was my next question, was that estimated cost to open the middle school next year. Did you have a figure for that?
I sure do. We had, I guess, a discussion approximately a week ago, try to determine what, if any, new positions would be needed at the middle school. And based upon that, we're looking at approximately a $2 million, about a $1.7 million estimated cost as far as new positions go in that school. Those are new positions, not transferred in positions. And I'm talking about general fund impact right now. There's some other items that I'll mention that won't impact the general fund, but do impact the overall financial picture for the school district. But we also as well have some other contractual type items, like an SRO, grounds maintenance, pest control, waste disposal, and utilities, of course, which would be the big item. At that, we've estimated that to be approximately $285,000 annually. And then we also would have some non-recurring costs, which would be some equipment purchases. And then the biggest part would be the school resource officer equipment. Just like you saw this year, we decreased the budget due to just a one-time cost associated with that. Well, we'd have the same thing here, so that's about another $169,000. So we're looking at about a total impact to the general fund now in the neighborhood of $2.1 to $2.2 million. And then, of course, you would have to add food service staff, and that would be probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $85,000 to $100,000 on top of that, but that would be food service.
So for any discussion that we might have later, we would need to, at least in our mind, think about next year's budget in addition to here in the normal increases, thinking about a $2.3 million increase for opening the new school.
I definitely think so. Now, that's based on current costs. That, if there's any type of inflationary increases with salaries or anything, obviously that amount would increase.
Okay. One more question, two more questions, then I'll sort of pass the baton. Student fees have always been in our budget packet, but I don't think looking through them this time because they were in here, and I went back to looking at the proposed budget for revenue, and we had student fees that were $35,000 last year, no proposed budget for this year. And then you changed that to, I believe, $12,000. When you look at these fees, 16,000 students with 12,000, that's not even an amount to $1 per student. So what do these $12,000 in fees represent? And this other fee income that's here, where is it reflected in our budget?
Well, the fee that I'm reflecting in the current general fund budget is for the phone notification system. That's a $2 per student charge, just at the high school level. And so that's why I completely omitted that last reading, but that is in here. We used to have the fee for parking at the high schools. but we've decided that's probably not a general fund item, that we ought to account for that separately so that that money is accumulated and used for repairing parking lots as needed, student parking lots as needed. So we've moved that out of the general fund, and that's why that's not reflected here.
Well, these fees that are in here, just that are in the back, for example, kindergarten, general instruction supplies, $25. Where does that revenue go? Since it's in the general fund budget, does it show up in our general fund, or?
No, it's not a part of the general fund budget at all. It's reflected in this fee structure, but it is what's considered a pupil activity fund. And those funds are typically maintained and maintained at the school level.
Okay. Does this budget provide for, I know it has a step increase, but is there any salary increase in here that's not a step increase that would include the board?
No.
So there's no salary increase, cost of living, step increase, or anything proposed here that includes the board?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Gant?
Mr. Richardson, I appreciate the budget and the hard work you've put in the last month. I agree with Mr. Turner. We ought to just somehow get you some more time because you've done a remarkable job with this. But talk to me a little bit about the changing of the funding formula. And one of the things that was the biggest loss that we're going to have was the categorical funding in the high achieving and the students at risk program. And that maybe, I mean, that's still that's one of the programs that we're continuing with, but what's the long-reaching effect of this? That money's not coming back anywhere under this new funding formula, I wouldn't think. It's not unless somebody decides to rewrite it next year somehow.
The way this is coming back to us, I guess, if you want to, so to speak, I guess, is that the high achieving piece especially is we're losing that. It's going away, and that's what they've used to fund the base student cost. So that comes back to us in the form of a weighting for gifted students, gifted and talented students. You know, in reality, I think I mentioned this before, we're only getting 70 cents on the dollar back for every dollar that's non-categorical and goes back into the formula now. Or excuse me, is categorical, it goes back into the formula now. The at-risk piece, we're not losing all of that funding, but we are losing about approximately half of it. That was cut at the state level and also used to fund the base student costs, which there's a weighting in there for at-risk students now in the EFA. So we will gain some of that back to the EFA.
We're going to gain some back, but we won't be where we were, obviously.
No.
I guess I'm concerned about down the road, maybe the impact of some of these programs. And certainly when I hear our board chair and I see what happened at graduation and realize we have so many high achieving students and we have a lot of at-risk students also, that I would hate to see an eroding effect down the road. And I know you all are on top of that 100%, but it's a certain positive in this district that we do have people who are serving very well in that category. It's just a concern. And I'm sure it's a concern lots of places.
It's a big concern. I think it's a big concern.
Chunk of this whole piece here.
It's probably not as big a concern in a district such as ours as it would be in some places in the state, but yes, it's a big concern to me as well.
And I guess I'm thinking down the road of the effect in a future year of another removal of a piece here or there, and we may have to be forced to make some extremely difficult choices that I hope we don't get to, but we've all lived through some of that. But well, thank you. I'm glad to know it's not a total loss, but we're not whole, we're not where we were, but we are adapting. I guess that's the best way to put it. There's a lot of adapting going on.
Yes, sir.
If I could add on to that, Mr. Gann, I appreciate you bringing it up. I think it would be good for us and for our community to know exactly how much we are losing for the high achieving. You've got this combined, right? At a later date, maybe next time you could tell us what you expect?
Well, I mean, I could tell you now, it's approximately $1.2 million that we're losing for the high achieving.
1.2.
And then another 800, I can't remember exactly, a little better than $800,000 we're losing on the at-risk.
Well, I agree with Mr. Gann, and I think you said it too. I don't think that's going to go over very well with our community and the high expectations that we have for our students. So that's too bad. That's unfortunate. And also, I think you mentioned on page 4 in the fiscal year 2015 general fund revenue, the EFA and how that's been affected by the new weighting system. Can you elaborate? You've got it as $34 million. What is that? That's down from what it would have been if the weighting system had not been, I guess, changed, voted on?
Well, I think what's happened, because statewide, you notice that that our weighted pupil units for the same number of kids are going to be increasing by, what, 1,500 or so, roughly, based on the same number of kids we currently have. I think what you're seeing statewide is, the dollars are being spread wider. So I have not done an impact to see what it would be under the current funding system. But I would say, yeah, we're probably getting less per child based on the new funding system because there's just more of them, and the dollars aren't there. My fear is that I got a couple of fears, I guess. Number one is that the department's not giving us because they don't know, and I don't have a way of knowing that we have accurate data as far as the new weightings go. And the other fear is if they do get a handle on it, then statewide you may see everybody's counts go up, which means they have to cap the base student cost, which means we're getting less dollars than we're anticipating. That's two of my biggest fears right now, which in essence is a budget cut.
In a major way. Ms. White?
As I see this now, I'm on page 6. If we have a projected shortfall of $2.1 million, and if we're going to fund that, then you said with a millage increase we get about $1.2 million. Is that what you said?
Well, about a little better than 1.5.
So 1.5. So we're going to have about a $600,000. We have to fund out of fund balance. Is that where?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Did you have more questions, Mr. White?
No.
Okay. Mr. Turner?
Ms. Richardson, I think both Mr. White and Mr. Gann in that last, from the discussion to today, have both talked about what the impact of this could be, depending on what the future funding is, and they've both talked about this could have a negative impact on our programs. We talked about staffing and so forth, and no one's here to alarm anybody. But I guess my question is, and it's really not so much a budget question, but it sort of follows up maybe to Mr. Gantt. What do we do between now and then? I know you won't. You'll be constantly, you and your staff will be monitoring this, but I guess my question is, where do we begin to prepare ourselves for what might be coming next year? We certainly, maybe not to you, but at least maybe to most of us, a lot of what we have here, we didn't anticipate. What's happening with the educational funding, and I know Governor Haley has said that if she's reelected, education funding is going to be a priority from here on out, as well it should be, till they can somehow or another get back to where we were years ago and make up that difference. But I guess my question is, what do you advise us as a board to make sure we give you so that we can be prepared for numbers like this? And Mr. White was doing the calculation on if we did have a tax increase, we still are short. If the money's not coming back, if we add $2.3 million next year on top of that, there's no funding per se for that unless we have the student growth. If we're into last year's this current year budget, have to use $1.7 million of our general fund to get through that. If we have to use $5 million of our general fund to fund the middle school. We don't need to be waiting to decide how we prepare for this. So I know you will, but I'm sure, Madam Chair, that we'll get feedback, but I know we won't be sitting here 11 months from now wondering what are we going to do a year from now about the situation that we're in, because I don't think we can, I think we need to hope for the best and expect the worst and sort of prepare that without alarming anyone, because we don't want that to happen. We're going to, no matter what happens, I think this district will remain a top performing district, but as Mr. White said 2 meetings ago, we don't need to close the gap by us coming from here down there. I know you will, and I encourage you, if this, not speaking for the chair, but if there's something that we as a board need to provide you so we can work towards those preparations, I think that would be good. And whoever's on the board next year, I would love to see you conduct a budget workshop for us. I think that board members can always benefit from that. I know in the past we've talked about that, but we broke it up into small groups, and I would love to hear whoever's on the board, I think, could benefit from hearing the input and the questions from any board member. So I hope we can do that, and I don't think you would be opposed to that arrangement. But thank you.
Not at all. I think that would be a great thing to do. I think we probably need to start that early in the process. But as far as, I think the board's doing, all we could ask right now is trying to look forward to see, we know some things are coming. I hope that the light that we're seeing at the end of the tunnel is not a train headed towards us. I'm gonna hope for the best, like you said. I don't think we'll ever get back to where we were. I just think that's just the new reality now. So we've got to learn to probably do or try to look at what we're spending and how we're spending, and try to make sure that we become more efficient so we can keep those dollars going to where they need to go in these programs, and keeping the teachers employed and the number of classes we've got going.
To follow up on Mr. Turner's request, you said it would probably be better to start earlier if we were going to do a workshop for the board. Could you put that on your calendar, let us know a good time, and we can coordinate it for sometime between one of our meetings or a special meeting? And so I'm putting that on you.
Okay, that's no problem. And I mean, quite honestly, it probably should be sometime, January to February, I guess, when we really start the process, and the General Assembly's back in session, so we'll kind of know where they're headed.
Okay, well, we'll work on getting a date, so I appreciate you keeping that burning then. Any other questions? Well, this is first reading, and we'll have, one more reading, is that right, or two more? One more. So if there are some questions, we've got a lot of information that was given to us, some new information, good news, bad news. Then I know Mr. Richardson is always available for questions. So we'll have the vote for the first reading, and then our next board meeting will be the second and last reading. So without any requests for further discussion, I'll take a vote for approval of the first reading of the proposed 2014-15 general fund budget. All in favor, raise your hands. All opposed, that passes 6-0. And that ends our action agenda, and actually it ends our school board meeting for tonight. Can I have a motion, Ms. Lovelace?